How we doing, everybody? Welcome to Monster Territory, brought to you by the Foul Territory Network. That was an absolute heartbreaker tonight. That was one of those games where if you found a way to win it, you could look back on this game and you could say to yourself, yeah, that was the win that really helped build the identity of this team, that really helped propel us into some good momentum. And unfortunately, the Tigers got to reap those benefits. This is a really good Tigers team, and I'm not saying you got to play a perfect game against this team, but in the end, you saw where the Red Sox came up short tonight in multiple facets, and the Tigers, they just showed you how good they are, and they showed you why they are one of the best teams in Major League Baseball. But for the Red Sox, you could also say, too, they really beat themselves a lot tonight. There were a lot of things to look back on that you could question. Lack of execution with a lot of things, both with the pitching and offensively. In the end, it was a great effort from the Red Sox, but you got to do more against a good team like this. It was an absolute battle. It felt like a postseason game. It really did. It just was a back and forth, felt like a boxing match, like a heavyweight bout. And in the end, the Red Sox couldn't come away with it. They're now 3-4 in extra inning games. That was now their 11th one-run loss. Got to get that cleaned up. We'll break this down. We'll get into it both offensively with the pitching. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. But before we do move forward, we just have a word from our sponsor.
This is a straightforward show, so I'm going to be very straightforward with everyone about PXG. Fastest way to improve your performance on the golf course is to get yourself a PXG golf fitting. Go in there and let the experts help you.
I've been using PXG for a few years now, Scotty. They are perfect. I love the way they feel. They fit them perfectly to my swing. They weighted them. They put grips in them. They put shafts in them. They use their heads, and they fit my swing beautifully. They have definitely improved my game. They just recently hooked me up with their new Allen putter, which is off the chain. I was draining putts the other day, left and right. So I definitely say go get your fitting at PXG. Nobody goes golf the way PXG does.
Yes, and for a limited time, you could save up to 20% on your entire order. Head over to pxg.com/foul. That's pxg.com/FOUL to save up to 20% on your entire order. pxg.com/foul. Restrictions apply. See site for details.
All righty, go check that out. And let's get into the post-game breakdown here. Let's start with the offense. It really felt like a roller coaster tonight. A lot of good things with the offense, but a lot of bad as well. A lot of guys stepping up for the offense tonight. David Hamilton. How about David Hamilton? This guy has absolutely struggled this year, but he had himself a good game here tonight. Had the big home run that tied the game late in the game there. So tip of the cap to Hammy stepping up in a big way today. Alex Bregman earlier in the game coming through, big home run. It's funny because in the offseason when Alex Bregman was deciding on which team he was going to play for, a lot of people were looking at where he excelled as a player at certain ballparks. And obviously Fenway Park, that's been a great park for him in his career. But at Comerica, people wondered, would that be a good fit for him because it does have a deeper left field? And that didn't matter to him all that much because he homered. And obviously, Christian Campbell, it looked like he was going to be the hero in this one. And for a moment, he was, just like Hamilton. But it is what it is. Also, Nick Sogard, shout out to him. Pretty solid game for him tonight. It is what it is. But a lot of things as well that came back to bite the Red Sox. Key strikeouts throughout this one. Let's kind of just break this down here. Second inning, like I said, Nick Sogard had the good night. He got it started, had the 2-out double there. And then Narv Dog, Carlos Narvaez, he also had himself a good game tonight. Shout out to him. Had the base hit, ended up tying it up there. Bregman with the home run that made it 2-2. Fifth inning, Hamilton, like I said, good game for him. Had the leadoff base hit. Seti with an RBI double that tied it 3-3. Duran had the base hit to left that made it 4-3. But then you get to the sixth inning. You're kind of getting some things started there, but big strikeouts. Cedam Rafaela with a strikeout. One thing, that's been in the reports lately, Sean McAdam of Mass Live saying the Red Sox would like for him to cut down on the first pitch swings, and he did swing at the first pitch there. It is what it is. He has vastly improved on the plate discipline compared to last year, but it is something to pay attention to there. And then Jarren Duran with the big K. there as well. You go to the 8th inning, right? You get started pretty well. David Hamilton, right, had the home run that ended up tying it. Seti with the walk, Duran with the double, but then Rafi with the strikeout in the 8th. You had a key opportunity there, to add on some runs, and it is what it is. So, and then obviously later on, Christian Campbell with the home run was looking like the hero at one point. But just an up and down night for the offense. I mean, obviously they, put the runs on the board. So in a way it feels like nitpicking, but you had some moments that you really could have added on to this, and like I said in the intro, this is a Tigers team that is hard to beat, and they're going to be hard to beat this year. They are going to be a contender to go to the World Series this year. Coming into the year, this Detroit Tigers team, I had my eye on this team because obviously they had a lot of good things from last year. They got red hot in the second half. Obviously, Tarek Skubal, you brought back Jack Flaherty. Imagine if this Tigers team had Jack Flaherty last year. He obviously went to the Dodgers at the trade deadline, but imagine if they had him. Would that have gone a bit different in the postseason where the Guardians ended up advancing in 5 games, to go play the Yankees in the ALCS? What if they had Flaherty? Maybe you're looking at a different play out in that American League. But this is a Tigers team where, they got a lot of good young bats, a team that really looks like, they're just a gritty team, but they play for each other. They're having fun with each other, and Javier Baez, credit to him, man. What a great night for him tonight. A couple of home runs. Obviously the walk-off, we'll get to that, but Javier Baez, man, this is a guy where he was looking like one of the worst contracts in Major League Baseball after signing that big deal a few years ago. Hasn't been able to stay healthy, hasn't been productive, but this guy has been great for the Tigers. But getting back to, obviously this is a Red Sox show, but the Tigers, man, you're going to have to do more. Even though you scored 9 tonight, you got to clean up as much as you can against this team. But let's talk about Brayan Bello. Up and down night for him. The one thing with Bello that's been following him, it feels like for a long time now, not even just this year, go back the last couple of seasons, is just the lack of command. Brayan Bello, 4 2/3, 6 hits, 2 earned. He just was battling. He was struggling with command, especially early on. But he also had a bit of a weird pitch mix tonight. The one pitch that we all love from Brayan Bello, where it kind of almost makes you think of Pedro back in the day. No one's ever going to have a Pedro Martinez changeup. I mean, Devin Williams, that guy does have a nasty changeup. Well, minus this year, he's been having his struggles, but you know what I mean. Pedro Martinez, amazing. But Brayan Bello, he's got a pretty good one himself, and he didn't really go to it all that much. Down to 13% on the night. His average for the year so far, 21%. And he was way up on the 4-seam fastballs. So, I don't know, a bit of a weird pitch mix for Brayan Bello. The Tigers, they're a good fastball hitting team. And so I was a little confused about that mix. But, either way, he had trouble commanding his pitches. He's battling that first pitch, the first inning, he had 25 pitches. He was it felt like he was really just trying to catch up with himself the entire night. He started to look a little better, once he got into the 4th inning, third, 4th inning. But, Torkelson had the home run off of him, obviously. The 3rd inning was a bit of a tough spot for Bello there. You had Javi Baez with the walk, Carpenter with the base hit. That moved Javi over to 3rd. You got the strikeout to Gleyber Torres, but then you ran into an issue here and this is one of those little things, defense. Carlos Narvaez, he has been a breath of fresh air behind the plate this year at catcher. He's been fantastic for the Red Sox so far this year. But tried to pick him off at third base, threw it away. Javi Baez ended up scoring to make it 2-1. And he came back. He got the strikeout to McKinstry. Riley Green got the ground out. But a bit of a messy inning. 5th inning, got a little messy there as well. He did strike out Javi Baez, but then Carpenter with a base hit. Gleyber with a hard hit ball to second base. Christian Campbell, good play, but not a great throw over to second. That's kind of something this year with Christian Campbell, where he's not necessarily bad at second base, but he's still really trying to get those little things down where some plays can get a little awkward for him. But again, like I said, I'll bring it up one more time. This is a good Tigers team, and those little things can go a long way. And then McKinstry had the blooper. Abreu had made a nice attempt out there, but in the end, couldn't come up with it. Runners at the corners. Then that's when the bullpen came in. bullpen came in here. And it was, I mean, you could say the offense was up and down despite the 9 runs. Bayo was up and down, and the bullpen was up and down. It just felt like a roller coaster all over the place here tonight. Credit to Justin Wilson coming in for the 5th, 2 outs to face Riley. Was able to get that locked down. But then Garrett Whitlock, he came in, and right off the bat, it was one of those nights where looking good with the breaking pitches, the off-speed pitches, but the fastball just seemed like he didn't have a grip on the fastball tonight. I don't know what was going on there. He was missing glove side a lot. He walked Torkelson. He struck out Sweeney on a nasty slider. Torkelson ended up moving to second base. Struck out Dingler. And then Jace Young getting hit by a pitch. And this was the key at bat. Jace Young has not been very good this year. That's a guy that you got to put away. You got the 2 strikeouts prior. That was, I think, could you say that was the turning point of this game, or that was the key to this game, not getting Jace Young out there, because then that led to the Javi Baez 3-run home run. Again, great bounce back year for Javi Baez. Bernardino ran into a little bit of trouble in the 7th inning, but he was able to get out of it for the most part. Justin Slayton looked nasty in the 8th inning. Big difference with Justin Slayton going heavy to the fastballs. Holy cow, this guy was just throwing the cheese and saying, all right, try and hit this. And they couldn't hit it. 9 swings overall, 5 whiffs. He struck out the side, 2 on the fastball, 1 on the sweeper. That's the Justin Slayton that we all know and love. Aroldis Chapman shutting it down in the 9th inning, striking out Zach McKinstry, 102-mile-an-hour fastball. Aroldis Chapman, what can you say, man? This guy's been fantastic this year. Unfortunately, we got to talk about the Greg Weissert outing. You had a lead there in the 10th inning. You had something going. You had something cooking. Looking like you're going to get an extra inning win, possibly. Greg Weissert, 2 out. Game-tying base hit to Trey Sweeney. Hung a changeup just a little bit too much. Just lack of execution. Not necessarily a bad pitch, I guess, but you got to do a little better with it. And then hung the sweeper to Javi Baez. That was the walk-off. Now, I saw a lot of people saying, why was Greg Weissert even in there for another inning? Well, they pretty much used up their entire bullpen. Yes, Sean Newcomb, but he was used up yesterday, went 5 2/3. So you weren't going with Sean Newcomb today. Your only other arm was Liam Hendriks. Greg Weissert, he's gone multiple innings before. So that was the right move, in my opinion, because, could you say maybe he should have tried to get a bit more out of his guys earlier on? Sure. I think you could maybe say that, but you're at the point where you're just running out of arms, right? And to me, I know in hindsight, it doesn't look all that great, but I think you still go with Greg Weissert, because if you go with Liam Hendriks, and then let's say it just keeps on going. Well, how many innings are you going to expect to get out of Liam Hendriks at that point? And I guess you can go, if it gets to a point where you got to go with a starter, maybe, but, it's kind of, it is what it is. Obviously, Greg Weissert just didn't execute, but when you take a look at the track record, he's gone multiple innings before. So I understand it. Obviously, it just didn't work out. Just a heartbreaker. Absolute heartbreaker here. You felt like you did all you could. But in the end, the Tigers, they made less mistakes. And they didn't, bite themselves in the butt as much as the Red Sox did, right? They didn't shoot themselves in the foot as much as the Red Sox did. Just a heartbreaker, man. But again, tip of the cap to the Tigers. This is a good-looking team. And if the Red Sox do run into this team down the road, if the Red Sox find their way into October and they run into this team, let's say, whether it's wild card round or maybe even the division round, who knows, maybe ALCS, I don't know, right? But I'm just saying you're going to have to clean it up the next time you go up against this team. Especially for tomorrow, which is what a segue. What a segue. We got a game 3. I apologize. It says game 2 on the screen. I apologize for that. I can actually fix that very quick here. Game 3. Well, it's not going to get any easier, ladies and gentlemen, because unfortunately, you got to go up against one of the best pitchers in all of Major League Baseball, and Tarek Skubal. 8 games, 47 and 2/3 innings, ERA at a 2.08, FIP at a 2.12. I mean, hey, reigning Cy Young winner, this is not going to be easy. This guy continues to be nasty. Going up against Mr. Tarek Skubal, you got Hunter Dobbins, my fellow Ginger. You got to love the fellow Ginger taking the mound. Hunter Dobbins, he's been very solid this year. I am a little worried about this matchup. Not even just because of Tarek Skubal. Yes, that is definitely a big part of it. But Hunter Dobbins, I actually worry about the pitch mix when it comes to the Tigers. Like I said, the Tigers, they're a good fastball hitting team. Again, which is kind of why I'm a little weird, Brian Bayo upping the fastball usage. And if you're wondering, Robbie, where are you seeing this? Where does it show the Tigers are a good fastball hitting team? Well, here on Fangraphs, when it comes to fastball runs above average, the Tigers rank second overall in Major League Baseball, only behind the New York Yankees. So Hunter Dobbins, we're going to have to go with I think a bit of a different mix here. I mean, we'll see. I mean, hey, at the end of the day, if you can locate the fastball, hit your spots, execute well, then hey, you know what? Any team, even if they're good against a fastball, if you can execute against them, that can be a different story. But I do wonder about this one. The bright side is that none of these guys have seen Hunter Dobbins. So you got that going for you. And for the Red Sox, they have seen Tarek Skubal a little bit. Alex Bregman, he's got 9 ABs against him. Rafi's got 9 ABs. And we got Trevor Story. Let's see Trevor Story. Will he be back in there? We'll see. He had the night off. Jarren Duran, 6 ABs. All right, so they have seen Skubal a little bit. I would imagine Trevor Story is going to be back in the lineup tomorrow. Get that righty bat back in there. And let's see, man, but this is going to be a tough matchup. Hunter Dobbins, right, he's been pretty solid for the most part if we actually go back to his last start here. And, hey, went up against the Royals. He was looking good. That was another heartbreaking loss. 6 innings, 5 hits, 0 earned, 6 Ks. Let's see if we can keep that momentum going, right? The start prior against the Twinkies was a little messy there. But, hey, for the most part, he's looked good against the Central teams. So his tour of the AL Central continues. He gets the Detroit Tigers tomorrow. So, but that is it for the Game 3 preview. We do have some good news within the Red Sox organization. We do have a couple of good things to talk about here. And listen, I mean, I don't know if anyone caught the Woo Sox game, but holy cow, the Woo Sox absolutely exploded. Taking a look here. They were down in this one 7-1 going into the top of the 8th, and they exploded for 9 runs in the 8th and the 9th. And of course, we're all focused on Roman Anthony, Marcelo Meyer. Roman Anthony, not too much tonight. 1 for 5 with a double, had a strikeout. Marcelo Meyer, he was, I'd say, the story of this one. Had a home run tonight, 2 for 4, 3 RBIs overall. Hey, these guys, they just keep on hitting, man. You got to love what Roman Anthony and Marcelo Meyer are doing here. I just wonder, it's still very early here. Obviously, what is it, May 13th up to this point. So, but these guys continue to bang on the door. Roman Anthony on the year hitting 298, 889 OPS overall. Marcelo Meyer hitting 275 with an 842 OPS overall. I'll be honest with you. I mean, would these guys have helped carry the Red Sox to a win tonight? I don't know, but the frustration, the inconsistencies, the heartbreaks, it's getting Red Sox fans a little frustrated. So it's very understandable for a lot of Red Sox fans out there to want to see Anthony and Meyer get the call. So that is that. I do want to touch on the Rafi Devors report. Do want to touch on that before we do wrap things up for tonight. Ken Rosenthal, he had a report also with the Foul Territory Network, had a report saying that I'm paraphrasing it, that he wouldn't be surprised if Rafi Devors were to come up in trade conversations. Now, here's the thing. Here's the thing with that. I'm going to say this right off the bat. I don't think Rafi is going to be traded at all. A lot of people have been talking Rafi Devors trades, best fits, what team could he go to? Hey, listen, I love a good trade talk more than anyone out there. That's what I've built my main channel on YouTube on, is talking trades. I love me some trades, but I don't think Rafi is going to be going anywhere, ladies and gentlemen. We've already talked at nauseum about, defending Rafi, and not wanting to go play first base, but also looking at the team point of view, stepping up for your team. We've looked at both sides at nauseum, but when it comes to trading Rafi Devors, I really don't see the benefit of it unless, and this is where Ken Rosenthal was getting at, unless if the relationship has just completely soured between Rafi and the organization. I just don't think it's going to get to that point. It does bring me back a little bit to Manny Ramirez back in 2008. Well, multiple occasions with Manny Ramirez. Even go back to 2005. He was popping up in trade rumors. Remember the Mets and the Orioles were coming up, right? Manny was just very disgruntled multiple times, even though he helped the Red Sox win a couple of World Series. In the end, got moved to the Dodgers, right? He was just having a lot of things that were not good, right? Got into a bit of a fight with Kevin Youkilis, right? Shoving the security guard, sitting out against the Yankees. There were a whole bunch of things with Manny Ramirez. So, he was very disgruntled. And then Nomar Garciaparra, right? Go back to 2004. Contract disputes going on. It got ugly between him and the front office. And then, he was an icon in Boston. They ended up shipping him out. So, these things have happened with the Red Sox before, but the Rafi situation is a completely different animal, right? He's on a long-term contract, compared to guys like Juan Soto, Vlad Jr. Yeah, it's a bargain of a deal compared to those guys, right? But you're still, that's a lot of money that you're going to have to find a team to take. And because he's basically a DH at this point, the contract is pretty much underwater by a good amount. And what do I mean by that? Where, yes, he's going to give you offensive value, but because he's not giving you anything defensively, even though he wasn't really giving you anything prior, but now he's definitely not as a designated hitter. Well, the money that you're paying him is more than what he is putting on the field overall from a value point of view. Yes, offense, you're definitely getting that, but the defense holds it back. So value-wise, you're underwater on the deal. So you're going to have to pay a decent amount of the contract. And then you also factor in, the latter part of the deal. That's only part of it, the fact that he doesn't give you defense. But then you factor in the latter part where he starts to, get a little older towards the end of the contract. So, you could see some regression during those years. You don't know how that's going to go, but you have to factor in those things as well. Basically, my point is that it's going to be difficult to move Rafi because of the contract. And then you also look at other teams' point of views where, okay, well, if we bring him in, is he going to be the DH? I mean, he's already said no to first base. So, could he play third base for another team? Well, teams know that he's been one of the worst defensive third basemen in the game for a while now. So it's going to be hard to find a taker for him, even just based off of that. So basically, just wrapping up kind of how I'm feeling about the Ken Rosenthal report. Sure, if both sides get a little, where if it goes too far, where the relationship can't be repaired, then yeah, there's always room for conversation with that. But I think they're going to be able to figure it out. I still think at some point there's a good chance Rafi will at least try first base. But overall, I just don't see the benefit of moving him. I think you should be able to figure out something with the relationship. In the end, if you just get rid of Rafi, it's going to make your team worse. I mean, he's been one of the best bats in Major League Baseball for a while now, and he's been red hot, for how long here, right? Ever since that rough start, the guy's one of the best bats in the game this year. So it's going to be hard to replace that kind of production on the fly. So, yeah, Manny Nomar, sure, but those are completely different situations. And this, I would say it's not even close to those two situations. So that's my thought on that. I don't think Rafi's going to get moved. I understand it's fun to talk about. Let me take a quick look at the chat before we wrap up the show for today. Yeah, Marco Scudero, Manny wanted to be traded like 5 separate times. It felt like every month we got a report that Manny wanted out. Carlos, so you're saying here, why not Liam Hendricks? Again, I think Alex Cora probably wanted to stick with Greg Weissert because he thought he was going to paint himself into a corner. Because if you go with Liam Hendricks, I mean, you're pretty much out of arms at that point. So I think he was trying to squeeze another inning out of Greg Weissert. And in the end, you got to execute. So it is what it is. Sean, awful bullpen. I do feel like this bullpen probably could use one more high leverage arm in there. That's kind of how I'm feeling. Do you bring back Luis Guerrero, maybe make a trade? I'm not so sure. But everybody, I am going to start wrapping things up right there. Again, a heartbreaker. This was a tough one here tonight. Like I've said multiple times, it's just one of those things where you got to do the little things. You got to clean it up as much as possible against a great Detroit Tigers team like this. We got a tough one tomorrow against Tarek Skubal. Let's see how this goes. I think the Red Sox, they're going to be ready to go, though. They got to figure out a way to avoid the sweep. Everybody, thank you for joining me here tonight over on Monster Territory, brought to you by the Foul Territory Network. Go enjoy the rest of your night. If you are listening to this in the morning, have a good rest of your day, and I'll talk to you next time.